Hey everyone, Vortex TCG here, and today I'm going to be showcasing you a game between myself playing DarkKnightmon and my opponent playing Pulsemon. The reason why I'm playing DarkKnightmon in this gameplay is because I asked you guys what deck I should play, and you guys chose DarkKnightmon. And if you're interested in what I should play next, please subscribe to the channel. There might be some polls in the future, maybe for BT11. But anyways, let's get into this gameplay video. My opponent has got a really strong start here. He has the Pulsemon on the bench, and he also has the Impulse, allowing him to play a Pulsemon for free and gaining an additional draw. And for my turn, it's a bit iffy. I obviously have the Izzy, but I also have the Mighty, so I'm doing okay when it comes to the memory side, but I don't really have any hard presence here. He goes into the Apemon. So he's just using Digimon to get into the Boltmon a lot more quicker. He swings with the Pulsemon, goes into the Boltmon there, and then he goes into the yellow memory boost, and he does find the Digimon, which is the main playmaker of this deck essentially. So in this situation, I'm kind of in a bad place because while I do have 3, potentially 5 memory, I can't really out-aggress the Digimon that is going to come up on the next turn. So what I do here is that I go into the Cavalier mode just to provide a blocker, because essentially the Digimon will be swinging for 2 checks and will be able to unsuspend. So I need to stop that as much as I can. And so I go into a Pride memory boost here, go into the EX-3, and then I get the EX-3 search, adding the 2 Skull Knightmons. Obviously I would prefer it if it went a different way here. I would love to have the Nene in hand, because then I can get potentially more blockers in the future. But what I go for here is I go for the DarkKnightmon. At this point, I don't think giving my opponent memory is much of a problem. So essentially I just go into the Dark Knight here because he's going to reduce it anyways. So he reduces it by 3 and then gains a memory back, or gains a security back even. And so he swings at security, unsuspends, and he gets a massive free memory for just swinging, which is insane. So I decide to block here, and then I use the Dark Knight effect to bring them both back suspended, and then I add the Dark Knight from the Mighty Axe mode search. So now he's got a lot of memory to play with, and I can't really do that much. He's just asking, I believe, do any of them have on deletion effects essentially, but in this situation none of them do. So he's just considering what he wants to do, considering maybe he wants to clear the board because maybe I could present lethal on the following turn. So he's just considering what he wants to do. He does have a lot of memory potentially. And so I think I'm just explaining here the blocker situation with my Tamer, which I don't have at the moment, because he was like, oh, what could be a blocker? So he swings into the Mighty Axe mode, gains 2 memory, and then places the reinforcing hard play, puts the Tamer on top, and then adds the other card to hand, and then goes into the Pulsemon. So bit of a weird play here for sure, because surely you'd want to stay at 3 memory, but I guess at this point, if I was to swing, it wouldn't be in a good situation either way. So at this point, I'm just considering what I would like to do, because it's a really hard decision, because obviously I do want to get rid of this massive stack, but I don't really have the memory to actually do that. So I swing a security here. It's obviously the Tamer, and so at this point, I'm just considering essentially what do I need to do? What do I need to achieve in this turn to try and limit as much as he can? So I use the Prime memory boost to gain 2 memory here. And at this point, I think the only thing I can really do is go into a Dark Knight to de-digivolve the Kazuchi, and then delete the Pulsemon on the field. In this version of the build, I'm not playing any hard removal. I'm actually just playing all combo pieces essentially. And so I go into the Dark Knight X antibody here, which allows me to get a purple or black Digimon back to hand, and then I get to delete a tamer and unsuspend. So essentially, he's now, reduce the memory that you'll have. But I think I misplayed here, obviously. I think I shouldn't have swung into the Security here, because if I didn't swing, essentially, if I didn't swing here, I would have definitely been in a better situation. In this part of the video, I was just showing Fraser one of my comments, essentially, because one of the comments in a previous video was quite funny, so just wanted to showcase that to him. But he goes to the yellow memory boost here to get even more search. He pops the reinforcing to gain free memory. And so he then plays the Pulsemon to get a draw and gain a memory. And at this point, he starts to swing with the Baltmon, gains the memory essentially, swings into a Dark Knight. That was very risky, to be fair. I know a lot of the stuff in this deck is just for memory, but I wouldn't risk that if I was him. And then he goes into the Pulsemon to end his turn, and yeah, at this point it's a difficult one for me, because essentially he has, I believe, 2 blockers available, so I'm not too sure what to do at this point. I don't think there is anything I can really do at this point. Obviously I could potentially Death X here, and maybe that was the play, but I don't think I'd go for it here, because I think, giving him so much memory essentially just means that he does end the game next turn. Because he does have the Pulsemon in raising. All he needs to go is a level 5, which would be the Baltmon, and then Kazuchi. But maybe he doesn't have the Kazuchi, because if he did, then, he'd be going into with it the Baltmon, I would assume. So, choices to make. I still haven't found level 3 this game, essentially. And so what I do here is I Digicross into the Mighty Axe mode to reveal the top 3, add 1, and then delete a 4 cost or less. So I delete the Pulsemon. And so I'm just considering what I need to do now. I would never usually go into the Mighty Axe mode for the deletion effect. But I think in this situation, I think I was tunneling a little bit here. And so we get into game 2, and I'm kind of figuring out what I need to do to essentially beat Pulsemon. Unfortunately though, one of the things is getting a rookie, and I do not find a rookie. So at least I'm able to pretty much set up for my future plays by going into a set to 3 tamer. And so my opponent will go into the yellow memory boost, which kind of says to me that, yeah, I mean, it's not working out, essentially. So I think, yeah, this is when I was showing him the comment. I thought it was quite funny. Anyways, so I think he's lacking level 3, obviously. So he goes into a level 3. Nice ult art. And then he goes into another yellow memory boost. And this is one of the things that Pulsemon is pretty good with, actually. They really take good use of the boosts, the memory boosts, because, you know, all they do is pretty much play like low level 3s essentially, and to get effects. So pretty good for that, I guess. But I pass him with 1, but obviously he has up to 5 memory this turn. So he goes into it. He goes into the Pulsemon to trash the 2 to gain 2 memory, I believe it is. So, you know, you can tell he's a little bit desperate, but he goes into the Bulkmon here for 2. And then he is going to swing. It does have jamming. He gains a memory as well. I get the Pride, and then I get also swing into the Chew. So, you know, I wish I had that Tumon right now on my field, but you know, you can't do much about that, unfortunately. And so at this point, I think it's just considering what else he wants to do for his turn. He then goes into the Balmon here, and I think my opponent recognizes that, you know, like, you can't, like, what answer do I essentially have at this point? So I think he goes into the Kazuchimon here for a reduced cost. So go to 0, to go into the Kazuchi, back to 3. And so he's in a very strong position, to say the least, because, well, I need to answer this very quickly because it can get out of hand very quickly. So, still haven't found a level 3 yet, unfortunately. But at this point I go into the Cavalier mode. I swing into security to get him off the 3 security, because essentially I need to do that. Apparently I had a level 3 in my hand at that point, so that's good. And then I go into the DarkKnightmon to to Digivolve the Kazuchimon and then get rid of the Pulsemon, because I think at this point, like, he can only trash 2 security at this point, so he's still going to have to pass to my turn. So he's not in a good situation here, for sure. Then he starts to build up his other stack of the Pulsemon and then the Pidomon. He swings it into the Skull Knight there, and he doesn't get any additional memory just due to the fact that he's not at 3 memory. So, a bit unfortunate, but that's what the deck does, unfortunately. So I go into the Monitormon. It should be game if I don't hit anything in security. First checks nothing, second checks nothing, and I win game 2. And so we get on to game 3, and my opponent will be starting here. He'll go into the Pulsemon here, and then he'll consider his plays for a little bit. I don't think my hand's pretty good here, so a bit worried about it, but he goes into the Impulse, and then he actually does end up trashing 2 to put me onto 1 memory. And so I hatch an egg, and I do not have anything, unfortunately, so I end up just playing the Deadly Axemon to reveal top 5, and unfortunately I only find 1 here, which is a big shame, because I'm pretty sure like around 23 cards in this deck do have Knightmon in their name, so it kind of sucks. He swings with the Pulsemon into security, it dies by the Skull Knightmon, and he ends up going into the TK to check out his security. Ends up adding the Pulsemon that I believe gives him 2 memory when at 3 memory. And then he'll swing with the other Pulsemon. It's a DarkKnightmon, so it ends up dying as well. And now he's going to pop the memory boost, and then he's going to play another Impulse to lock me at 1. So my opponent is definitely trying to punish me quite a lot by forcing me to go into 1 memory, and at minimum he's going to have 5 memory on his turn, which kind of sucks. So I go into the Cavalier mode here for 1 memory, so I get a blocker and jamming. It's also at 7k now, so it doesn't really matter because it's jamming, but it's pretty nice. And then I end up going into a Mighty Axe mode for 2 here to delete the Pulsemon and search out one of the DarkKnightmons or one of the pieces that I'm missing. And then it goes to his turn. So at this point he has a pretty much empty board. He has like 3 Digimon, but 3 cards left in his hand. So he's in a bit of a sticky situation, and he goes into the Boltmon here, pretty much meaning that he's obviously just not getting the draws he needs, essentially. So I'm feeling very confident in my current state of the game. So I swing into security at 7k, hits a yellow memory boost. So if he does end up having a big target in the hand, he might be able to just force it out by using both of these memory boosts. So now I end up going into the Dark Knight to pass him over to 3. This is because I want my Skull Knight Dead EX mode to be protected, and also I get to play those sources out if it was to die. And so he's considering what he wants to do at this point. Doesn't have blocker, so pretty important. So I think what my opponent is going to do is potentially just leave it. But he's going to check the DP of the Skull Knight Cavalier mode and use Electric Rush on his Pulsemon to swing into the Cavalier mode to trade. So not the greatest situation. And then he'll play Impulse to pass. He doesn't have any additional Pulsemons in the hand. And so I just end my turn by playing the Nene. I mean, this is a misplay. It's clear misplay. I should have just swung into the Boltmon here, because essentially what can he do? So that's a big misplay from me. I don't think he ends up marrying though, so yeah. But either way, if he was to attack now, he's forced to, you know, basically have a blocker. So I'm basically protecting myself here if needed. And so at this point you can see like he's not doing very well and he has to pass the turn to me. So yeah, not the greatest to say the least. So I'm just considering what I need to do here essentially. So I end up just playing the DarkKnightmon here. This is obviously just like, I would say like just pretty bad play. Like this could have all just been stopped essentially, but yeah, I'm just you know, not just taking advantage of the situation essentially. So he pushes the Pulsemon up and then goes into the Pulsemon so he can get some protection. Then he goes into the Pulsemon, go to 4. And then I believe what he ends up doing here is quite funny. He ends up using all 3 to go to 10 memory to play the Kazuchi. So I go to 2 memory. The Pulsemon dies due to the DarkKnightmon. And yeah, at this point, I'd say pretty done deal. So I go into the Monitormon, so I do have a presence of lethal next turn potentially. So I swing into security, it's a Piddo. Then I'm just considering what I want to do. I'll swing the DefX into security here as well. It's a Tamer. And then what I end up doing here, probably just another misplay at this point. My opponent slamming the desk because doesn't really matter anything. Because I go to the X antibody here. So I get to return a purple. I end up returning just a Dark Knight. Pop the TK. This was a misplay. I should have popped the Tai and Kari, because it gets him 2 memory instead. I don't think it matters though, essentially. So the Dark Knight does have blocker at this point, so he's just checking. He swings, does minus 2k to the security. It's a 12k, but it's a 10k because of the minus security. And then pretty much he just goes into a Boltmon to pass me to 1. It dies obviously, and then I pretty much swing for game.